Imagine the Houston Texans building a defensive dynasty only to realize the bill for their cornerstone pass rusher is double what everyone projected. Sources inside the building are buzzing about a contract negotiation that isn't just resetting the market, but completely shattering every historical precedent for an edge defender. We were told $40 million was the ceiling, but internal whispers suggest the actual number is skyrocketing toward a territory no defensive player has ever touched. The financial future of the entire franchise is now hanging in the balance. Will the Texans pay the historic price or risk a locker room rift? Will Anderson Jr. is officially on the verge of a historic payday that could change the landscape of the Houston Texans salary cap for the next decade. Based on recent information surfacing from league insiders like Albert Breer, the price point for Anderson has shifted from being a high-end deal to an absolute market-shattering tsunami. It would be a stunner at this stage if he signed for anything less than $50 million per season. This represents a massive leap from the $40 million figure that was circulating just weeks ago among other major reporters. The Texans front office has already shown they are willing to pay a premium to lock up their blue-chip talent early, much like they did with Derek Stingley Jr. last year. Head coach DeMeco Ryans views Anderson not just as a player, but as the gold standard of the culture he wants to build in Houston. This is the guy who sets the tone in the weight room, the film room, and on the field every Sunday. Because of that cultural impact, the organization feels compelled to reward him as the premier defender in the National Football League. If this deal goes through as expected, Anderson will surpass Micah Parsons and his $46.5 million annual average value, making him the highest-paid edge rusher in history. The front office is working overtime to ensure this deal is inked before training camp begins to avoid any distractions or potential holdouts that could derail the momentum of this rising defense. They want him focused on chasing quarterbacks, not chasing checks, but the sheer size of this commitment is starting to raise eyebrows around the league. While the intentions are clear, the financial ripple effects of paying a defensive player $50 million a year are immense. This isn't just about rewarding a star, it's about how much money is left over for the most important position on the field. The organization is currently walking a tightrope between building a dominant defense and keeping their franchise quarterback happy. If you think $50 million for a pass rusher is a lot, wait until you hear how this specifically complicates the situation for the leader of the offense. The clock is ticking on these negotiations, and the numbers are only going up as each day passes without a signed contract. But this massive deal carries a hidden cost that could impact the roster's depth sooner than fans realize. Is Will Anderson Jr. actually worth $50 million a year, or is Houston making a massive mistake that will haunt their cap space for years to come? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments because this deal changes the entire trajectory of the team. If you want the most accurate inside information on every move the Houston Texans make, you need to subscribe to the channel right now. Hit that like button to support our coverage and help us grow. We have more breaking details coming up, so do not click away from this video yet. CJ Stroud is the name that every Texans fan needs to be watching closely as these negotiations with the defense reach a boiling point. While the priority right now is clearly focused on securing Will Anderson Jr., the reality is that Stroud is also extension eligible this offseason. The silence surrounding Stroud's potential new deal is becoming increasingly loud, especially when you consider that he and Anderson were drafted together to lead this franchise. By committing $50 million annually to the edge rusher position, the Texans are effectively shrinking the available pool of money for their star quarterback. Usually the quarterback is the first person to get the massive bag, but Houston is flipping the script by prioritizing the trenches first. This creates a fascinating dynamic within the locker room and the front office. Sources indicate that while there is no immediate tension, the urgency for Stroud's camp to get a deal done hasn't matched the fever pitch of the Anderson negotiations. If Anderson sets the market at $50 million, where does that leave Stroud? We are likely looking at a situation where the quarterback will eventually command $60 million or more. Paying two players over $110 million combined would be an unprecedented move for a franchise that has historically been careful with long-term spending. General manager Nick Caserio has been aggressive lately, as seen with the record-breaking extension for kicker Kaimi Fairbairn and the early deal for Stingley. However, balancing a historic defensive contract with a market-setting quarterback contract is a different level of salary cap gymnastics. The Texans are betting on the salary cap continuing to rise at a record pace to accommodate both stars. If the cap growth slows down, The team could be forced to let high-quality role players walk in free agency just to keep their two main pillars. There is also the question of leverage. By waiting, Stroud's price only goes up as other quarterbacks like Dak Prescott or Jordan Love sign their next deals. Houston is playing a dangerous game of financial chicken. They are desperate to keep the defense elite under DeMeco Ryans, but they cannot afford to alienate the most talented quarterback in the history of the franchise. The internal plan seems to be locking down the defense first, then pivot to the offense, but the price of entry for both is reaching astronomical levels that few teams have ever successfully. Nick Caserio and the Houston front office are essentially making a statement to the rest of the league that the Texans are no longer a team that develops talent for other organizations to buy. By potentially paying Will Anderson Jr. $50 million per year, they are signaling that they will pay a premium to keep their homegrown superstars in the building. This is a massive shift from the previous era of Texans football. The impact on the roster will be felt immediately in how they approach free agency. With so much money tied up in a few players, the team will have to become masters of the NFL draft to find cheap, high-level starters on rookie contracts. You can expect the Texans to be less active in the second and third waves of free agency in the coming years. They are moving into the star-heavy phase of roster construction. This strategy worked for teams like the Rams, but it leaves very little margin for error if injuries strike. DeMeco Ryans wants a defense that is feared, and you don't get that without a generational pass rusher. By making Anderson the highest-paid defensive player, Ryans is getting the anchor he needs to build his scheme. However, the future of the franchise depends on whether they can maintain a supporting cast around Anderson and Stroud. The next two draft classes will be the most important in Nick Caserio's career. He has to hit on mid-round picks to offset the massive contracts at the top. We are seeing a franchise that is all in on their current window of contention. They aren't worried about 3 years from now. They are worried about winning a Super Bowl while these two stars are in their physical prime. The urgency is palpable inside the facility. They know the window to win with a cheap quarterback is closing fast, and the Anderson deal is the first domino to fall in a series of massive financial commitments. If this works, Houston becomes a perennial powerhouse. If the cap becomes too top-heavy, they risk becoming a team with 2 stars and no depth. Every decision made this offseason is being viewed through the lens of this $50 million price tag. It is a bold, aggressive, and incredibly risky move that will define this era of Houston Texans football and determine if they can finally bring a championship to the city. The Houston Texans are standing at a crossroads that will define the next decade of the franchise. Paying Will Anderson Jr. $50 million a year isn't just about football stats. It's a declaration of identity. This organization is betting everything on the belief that a dominant pass rush and a franchise quarterback are the only things that truly matter in the modern NFL. It shows a level of confidence and aggression we haven't seen in Houston for a very long time. For the fans, this is both exhilarating and terrifying. It's exhilarating because it proves the team is willing to do whatever it takes to keep world-class talent. It's terrifying because one mistake in cap management could set the team back years. This is the price of greatness in today's league. You either pay the stars or you watch them win championships somewhere else. The Texans have chosen to pay. This move solidifies Will Anderson as the face of the defense and sets the stage for C.J. Stroud to become one of the highest-paid athletes in the history of professional sports. The culture that DeMeco Ryans is building is being backed up by the checkbook of the front office. Now, the pressure shifts to the players to deliver on that investment. Can Anderson live up to a $50 million billing? Will this contract prevent the team from surrounding Stroud with the weapons he needs? These are the questions that will be answered on the field next season. One thing is certain. The Houston Texans are no longer playing it safe. They are swinging for the fences, and the entire league is watching to see if they connect. What do you think about this record-breaking number for Will Anderson? Is it too much? Or exactly what he deserves for being the heart of this defense? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Texans front office moves, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Like the video to help us keep bringing you this exclusive insider content. Houston is making power moves, and we will be here to cover every single one of them. The journey to the top of the AFC starts with these massive deals.